Hello everyone, this is General Hand Grenade. Welcome to my war room in Prince George, British Columbia. The video that we're going to do now is another in our series of Global War 1936 to 1945 expansion sets, and this one is a fairly new one. It's called US War Plans. Basically it's a bunch of different plans that you can implement. And it changes the rules, but not all over the game. It just changes the rules in the small areas that you're going to do these plans in. And there's a number of them, and they're all over the world, actually. So let's take a look at what you get with this set here. Okay, so here's all the units here. So you're going to get 3 destroyers and a couple of infantry for the Americans. A couple of these chemical markers. There's 4 German partisans, 2 Japanese partisans, 2 Russian partisans, and then these markers down here. You get 1 airfield marker and 4 pro-axis markers. So let's just take a look at what we got here. So there's the front page, and we'll flip the page, and on the second page it just introduces it. It's got the picture on there, and it tells you it's different military scenarios. So let's move on. It just gives you the list of stuff that you get in the set there. And then the first one is called War Plan Citron. And that one takes place down in South America. So you're actually bringing South America into the game, which is kind of cool, because South America doesn't play a very big role. So let's just move this over here. So War Plan Citron was the U.S. contingency plan to invade Brazil. Now normally in the game you can try to annex Brazil by paying money and rolling a dice and trying to take control of Brazil that way. But in this way, you can declare war Plan Citron, if any nation in South America is Axis controlled or aligned. The U.S. does not need to be at full production or pay any IPPs to implement this plan. The USA may invade Brazil and conquer it. So normally if the Americans, or for any allied nation, to attack a neutral, they would have to pay 10 IPP. So in this plan here, what it's saying is that if any Axis nation takes over any part of South America here, and that includes down here in Buenos Aires and Santa Cruz and Santa Fe. The Germans have the opportunity to roll the dice once. If they get a 2, then they get these 3 territories down here. So if that happens and they're successful, then the U.S. can declare War Plan Citron, and they can invade Brazil, not annex it, but invade it, and it's not going to cost them any money to do that. And plus, normally the U.S. needs to be at full income in order to invade anybody, including a neutral territory. But for this one, it doesn't matter what their income is at. If Germany takes control, or if any Axis nation for that matter take control or align any nation in South America, then the Americans can do this plan. So what it is, the American must, after this, keep at least 1 infantry unit in a Brazilian land zone in order to get the IPP value of that zone, and keep 1 destroyer in each of C zones 104 and 107, or it does not get any of the IPPs from any land zone in Brazil. So once the Americans have taken control of that, let me just get some markers here. So the Americans come down here and they invade, and they take these guys out, and they take all their territories away from them. So this is afterwards. After this has happened, I might as well put an American factory on there as well. Make it all official. There we go. So this is afterwards, when the Americans have taken them over. Then it says they have to have at least 1 infantry unit in each Brazilian land zone. So any kind of infantry, it doesn't matter what kind. Like you could use anything really. Just gotta grab 3. So you'd have to have some kind of infantry unit in each land zone. in order to collect the money for all of them. Even if you're missing this guy here, then you don't collect for any of them. So you have to have that, and you have to have a destroyer in 104 and 107. So here's 104 and here's 107. I guess these things you would have taken off already. So there you go. Yeah, if you don't have at least this much here, the 2 destroyers and the 3 infantry units, then you don't get to collect any money for that. So that's afterwards. Now, in order to play this, so Argentina and Chile. An invasion of Brazil by the U.S. forces Argentina and Chile to become German-controlled states, or German aligned if or as soon as the U.S. player is at war with Germany. The Germany player may use these nations to attack U.S.-owned Brazil. So the Germans are going to take control of these 2 territories here, and they can use the stuff in these 2 territories to attack Brazil itself. And then partisans, if you're using the partisan expansion, the German player may roll a partisan generation roll for each Brazilian land zone with a partisan generation roll of 11 or 12 after U.S. implements War Plan Citron. So that's why they give you the German partisans. So if you roll an 11 or 12, like you pick, okay, this territory, and you roll the dice and you get 11, so you put, and then okay, this territory, and you roll a 5, so you don't get anything in this territory, and you roll a 12, so you put another partisan there, right? And every turn that the U.S. owns these, you will continue to roll for a partisan on Germany's turn, right? Like you can actually add these up. I mean, it's not a very easy to get as 11 or 12 on a 12-sided dice, so a 1 in 6 chance of being successful. But you know, like over the course of a game, it can add up, right? So you might have 2 or 3 partisans in one of those zones, or like 5 or 6 in the whole thing, right? And so that's how that is War Plan Citron, as the American invasion of Brazil. Okay, so let's move on to the next one. Okay, the next plan, and then maybe it's my favorite of all these plans, if I was to be the American player and I was going to be using these, would be this one. It's called War Plan Gray, and it's all about the Azores Islands right here. So because of the Azores location, they make an ideal base for aircraft hunting U-boats operating in the Atlantic convoy routes. The U.S. planned to invade the islands to keep them out of German control. So the Americans wanted to go in here and they wanted to invade this so that the Germans wouldn't come out here and grab it and, you know, like have a base that they could use to do their convoy raiding there. You could see how advantageous that would be for them. So how to implement this, it says if Portugal is neutral and the U.S. is at 20 IPP income or greater, it may invade the Azores Islands by paying 8 IPP to the bank. Now, I mentioned earlier that normally you'd have to pay 10 IPP if you wanted to invade a neutral country. But here they're letting you get away with only 8 IPPs. But the real kicker here is Portugal will not join the Axis or declare war on the U.S. because of this action. And so you see Portugal, it's just right here. Now it's got a militia on it, it's got a destroyer on it, and it's got an air base on it. And normally what would happen is without using these rules, then the Americans would invade the Azores, and that once they did that, automatically Portugal would become German. So you would replace this with a German militia, and you would put a German destroyer on there, and the Germans would get that 1 IPP for that territory there. But in this, they're not going to do that. They're going to allow the Americans to take the Azores and have a base there. So the significance of that is that all fighters, tactical bombers, and medium bombers starting in the Azores or continuing on combat air patrol from there have a patrol range of 2. So that's pretty big. So like the Americans take over the Azores, right? Probably what they'll want to do is, like, they remember that you got that air base there. So here's that air base. What I would do myself though is I would use my own air bases. I've got these air bases here from Combat Miniatures. So I would use these, and now all my aircraft, when they want to go on combat air patrol, like you see the convoy lines here. Normally, when you go on combat air patrol, you would only get to go one space. So they would only be able to patrol this space in here normally, right? But with these rules, you can go to an extra space. So you could go +1 space. So you could go out to here where the convoy route is, or out to here, or out to here. Like normally you can't get here with an aircraft. Here, let me just move that up a bit. Normally you can't get out here with an aircraft, or to this space even you couldn't get. But you put a bunch of planes here and you throw them all on combat air patrol. You could cover the mid-Atlantic, and then you could have the British cover, you know, close to Britain and close to North America over there. So that's part of why it's really good. The other part is then you've got a place to go halfway in between. Like you could put a naval base on there. Let me see here. Let me grab a naval base. I'd put a naval base on there too. And then the Americans, it's so far across the Atlantic, right? It's hard to use your assault force. So let's just put this on, say this is a whole American Navy, right? With transports and stuff on the transports and everything. So we could go to here and stage our attack, and then we could be building more transports back there, and from there we could be going and hitting anywhere on the mainland. So you know, like we could go 1, 2, 3, we could reach up as far as the Netherlands from there if we wanted to, and we could go 1, 2, we could come down to Africa down here. We could hit a lot of different spaces from the Azores there if we had a naval base on it. So that's something that I would do if I was playing with this war plan gray. It is a double-edged sword though. Here, let me just move that off of there. Let's just move this off of here. Let's say that the Germans happen to take it from you. Then what happens then is that the Axis aircraft have a +1 convoy rating bonus if the Azores has an air base on it. So this isn't normal, but like you put an Axis aircraft on there, you see there's a convoy line. Now I don't see in the rules anywhere where you do anything, but it seems to me what they're saying, like say you want to go and raid this convoy line here. Well, if you add the fighter into that, and he's somewhere along the line, then you can add +1 to that. Like this is already +2, that would make it +3. And then as for a modifier, I don't think you'd raid the line with the aircraft, but you could use it to add 1 to the convoy rating of your sub here. So that's a double-edged sword there. You got to watch out for that. Anyway, so that's War Plan Gray, the Azores. The next one is called War Plan Green, Mexico. So the U.S. developed plans to invade Mexico in case the region became unstable due to the presence of anti-U.S. elements. So it's really the other sides that initiate this one, not the Americans. The Germans and the Russians can pay 2 IPP and make a partisan generation role in Mexico. So a success is on 11 or 12. So you pay $2 and you try to roll on 11 or 12, and if you get it, then you get to place partisan in Mexico. So let's say it was like it could be the Russians or it could be the Germans, right? Let's say they both got one in there. So what happens after that is if there is any partisans from the other guys in Mexico, then the U.S. can invade Mexico. And if it invades Mexico, the Axis may roll for partisans each turn after at 11 or 12. So that's the danger of it, right? Like you're wondering, well, why would they want to do that and how let the Americans attack Mexico? Because Mexico's worth money. The reason is because then for free after that, for the rest of the game, you get to make a partisan roll there. Both the Comintern and the Axis get to make one. And again, it's at 11 or 12. So the U.S. must maintain at least 1 infantry in Mexico at all times to get the IPPs, and have 1 destroyer in C Zone 71. And here, I'm going to show you something here. I spoke to Doug earlier today to find out about this. It says in C Zone 71 and C Zone 2. C Zone 2 is way up there by Greenland. They don't mean C Zone 2. So it's C Zone 71, so you have to have an infantry in Mexico. Let's say all this stuff is off here. All the Mexican stuff is gone. So you have to have an infantry, you have to have a destroyer here, and you have to have a destroyer not in C Zone 2, but this C Zone way over here, on the other side of Mexico. So this is C Zone 70. And I believe, like, it doesn't say anything different. This says Mexico, the other one says Mexico. So I think this is all one territory. I don't think that this territory is separate from where the Mexicans were on the other side of the board there. So I think it's just one territory. So you have to have your destroyer here. You have to have your destroyer over here in C Zone 71, so 70 and 71, and you have to have an infantry there. And if you do that, then you get the 1 IPP that Mexico is worth. But you see what I mean, though? Like, this is just a tiny sliver here. I believe that the other side, both of them are called Mexico, so I think that they're all one territory. So you have to have that guy there, you have to have the destroyer on either side, and then the Americans will get the dollar for that, or the IPP for that. But the Germans and the Comintern get to roll for a partisan every turn for the rest of the game. So the Americans are going to have to put lots of infantry down there and keep taking those partisans out, because if you get 2 partisans down there, then all of a sudden they have a militia. Like, you got to remember the victory conditions, that if any one territory gets taken over by the Axis or the Comintern, then the Americans are not going to get that 1 IPP, or sorry, that 1 point at the end of the game, because they will have, I guess, they violated the Monroe Doctrine. Like, they're just not going to get that point anymore. So anyway, that's War Plan Green, Mexico. The next one is called War Plan Indigo, Iceland. So the US planned to invade Iceland to keep Germans from occupying it after the fall of Denmark. These areas were needed to defend North Atlantic convoy routes and were important areas for predicting weather in the European theater. So for implementation here, if a neutral Denmark is conquered by the Axis or Comintern, the US may declare Iceland and Greenland to be US owned and may station troops and aircraft in either location as soon as they have at least 1 US infantry present. So this is neutral right now. This is Denmark. And the Germans, being the big meanies that they are, they come up and they invade this guy and they take over. And so the Americans go, okay, War Plan Indigo, and here's Iceland right here, okay? So then the Americans, all they have to do is, they don't have to pay any money, they don't have to do anything. They just have to drop 1 infantry down there, and then they get Iceland. And then after that, they can do whatever they want. That's theirs now. They can land planes there. They can use that for whatever they need. So that's War Plan Indigo. And that's it. That's all there is to do with that one. There's nothing overly complicated. They get Iceland if Germany gets Denmark. They just have to go drop a dude down there. The last one is called War Plan Yellow, and this is an older plan designed to provide relief to U.S. nationals in China in the event of an anti-U.S. uprising in the Shanghai International Settlement and the Beijing Legation Quarter. These areas were created under the unequal treaties forced on China and were hotbeds for anti-Western sentiment. The plan included the use of chemical weapons if necessary. So how to implement this? Each turn, the US and the KMT are aligned. So once they're aligned, they're both at war with the same major power, which would undoubtedly be Japan. The Japanese player may, but not required to make, a free partisan generation role in each Shanghai and Peking. Now, if you're reading that, you're wondering where the hell is Shanghai. That's Nanking in this game. So when they say Shanghai, they're talking about Nanking, and here's Peking up here. So the Japanese could decide to make a partisan role in either place. That the Americans and the KMT are aligned. They have success on 11 or 12 when they're trying that role. So as soon as there are 2 or more partisans in either zone, the US may implement War Plan Yellow. And it has the following effects. First of all, US ships and aircraft may move into the Pacific and may freely move into Midway, Guam, Hawaii, and the Philippines. Normally, the US aircraft, before they're not, sorry, let me start they can freely move into the Midway, Guam, Hawaii, and the Philippines. I think you can do that anyway when you're at war. Also, the U.S. may attack and capture Peking and Shanghai without being at war with the KMT. So the U.S. can actually capture these territories, which is unusual because the KMT is on their side. The U.S. and KMT troops may no longer share land zones for the rest of the game. So the U.S. and the KMT can't. It's like the Japanese are driving a wedge between the nationalist Chinese and the Americans by putting partisans in there. Like they're creating anti-Western sentiment, and that's driving a wedge, and that's why the Americans would have to take out one of these places as opposed to sharing them, right? So Japan may roll for partisans in Peking and Shanghai each turn. So after that, they get to roll one each turn. And after that, the CPP gains +1 recruitment roll until at war with Japan. So the recruitment roll, what happens is the CCP is it's during the place units and collect income phase. They make a roll of the dice, and if the roll is less than or equal to the total number of Chinese land zones the CPP possesses, the CPP get to place 1 infantry or 2 militia in any of those territories. So they only start with 1, so they got to roll a 1 in order to place new units down. But with the +1, now they can roll a 2. Or if they had, say, 4 territories, then they could roll a 5 or less, right? So that's going to help out the CPP. If 2 Japanese partisans are in the same zone, they immediately form into a militia and form a Japanese-controlled puppet state. So you would place a Japanese roundel on that territory. So like if they got that one, they had 2 partisans there, they turned it into a militia. Here, let me just show you here. We got the 2 partisans there, and they turned into a Japanese militia. So you take the partisans off, you put the militia on, and they become a Japanese puppet state. There you go. Now, the expansion compatibility. So that's the chemical weapons that you got in the set there. The U.S. may use chemical weapons to attack partisans during War Plan Yellow. This qualifies as clandestine use as outlined in rules for chemical weapons. So I whipped out the directions for chemical weapons. Here, let's just look at that here. Let me find out where it talks about that. Clandestine use. Here, I'll just pause it and I'll find it for you. Okay, so this is what they're talking about. It says the Axis powers may attempt to use chemical weapons covertly against minor powers. Each time such a weapon is used, the Axis and Allied players roll opposing D12. If the Allied player wins by 8 or more, the provisions of 2.2 take effect. So that's this one. Otherwise, they do not. So 2.2 is any nation that initiates the use of chemical weapons loses 1 victory objective, regardless of whether that use is against a major or minor power. So I guess that's your points at the end of the game, right? So you could lose points on that by using the weapons, the chemical weapons. So I don't know why you would want to do that, but I guess you could. I'm not sure that I understand War Plan Yellow as much as the other ones. I might have to read it over a bunch of times and play with it a bunch. So if you've played with the war plans, then explain it to me, because I don't understand that one as well as I should. I think, but anyway, there's some cool plans in here. Like I definitely like that Azores one, and the one with Brazil. That's going to bring South America into the game. South America isn't much of a player in this. You know, like you get all these units down here, but none of them get used, right? So it'd be kind of cool to bring them into the game. And I know that the expansion, they're doing an expansion set for South America, and I'm looking forward to getting my hands on that one. I'm not sure how long before it's going to be out, but that'll be neat, because then you could actually bring South America right in. This, you know, like it's kind of under, okay, you know, if this happens, then the Americans can attack Brazil, but it'd be nice to bring this section of the board into the game, right? That'd be cool. Anyway, so that's U.S. war plans, and thank you for joining me today. So take care, everyone. General Hand Grenade out.